What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy. We want to wish you and yours a very Merry Christmas, very happy holiday season. Obviously, this is a really fun time of year, especially if the Cowboys are good, which happens to be the case this year. The holidays are happening. The food is good. The treats are good. The calories don't count. And the Dallas Cowboys are playoff bound. In fact, the Dallas Cowboys literally playoff bound thanks to Thursday night's loss by the San Francisco 49ers. The Dallas Cowboys officially clinched a playoff berth. Now, there are a number of ways the Cowboys can actually clinch the NFC East before their game on Sunday night. We outlined those ways in a video for you recently here on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. So needless to say, there's a lot of action happening in the lead up to this particular game that we're about to get into. And it is our preview show here on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel, like we have done all season long, getting you ready for the upcoming game for our Dallas Cowboys. We'll dive into the film room with Matt Minnick and look at some football team players that the Cowboys should pay attention to. And we'll, of course, venture across enemy lines with Brian Stabby from Hogs Haven, SB Nation's home for Washington football team content. Stabby joined us a couple of weeks ago. This is a unique thing where you get, the two matchups against a division rival in 3 weeks. I'm not a fan of that personally, so hopefully the schedule works out in a different way. But we are here, obviously to get into the second matchup between Dallas and Washington. Obviously, the first one went our way. It was a little bit scary, a little bit touch and go there at the very end. The Cowboys making it a little bit closer than it had to be. And like I said, I mean, this is a weird week because this game might not necessarily hold a ton of significance for the Cowboys. It's very possible that they are NFC East champions before they even set foot in the building on Sunday to get ready and warmed up for the game. Now, that's not to say that there's nothing to play for. There's obviously still seeding and potentially the number one overall seed. There's a lot going on here. There's pride, if you want to call it that. But some of the win could be taken out of the sails, at least as far as the broadcast is concerned. But what needs to happen for the Cowboys to get their 11th win of the season? Very cool that we were talking about a team that already has double digits before any of the presents under the tree are in fact open. We'll go through our list of things before we talk to Stabby. First of all, Cowboys offense. Got to get it together. All right. Got to get it together. And I know we've had this conversation a number of different times. We've talked about the Cowboys offense and how they've been flat, how they've been lethargic, how they've been carried by this defense. I mean, this season is challenging really everything I've ever known about the Cowboys. I've never, ever in my life rooted for a Cowboys team that has had this level of success. And, at least over the second half of the season or over a long stretch of the season, had it be due to the defensive side of the ball. I know in 2018, the defense really came on strong and they had some really great performances. You think back to that Thursday night win against New Orleans, but that was the defense kind of playing complementary football. That Cowboys offense, that was right after that first little run after they had traded for Amari Cooper. And so the offense was contributing. It was kind of this even Steven proposition. But right now what we've got is a defense that is dominating teams. 4 takeaways in each of their last 3 games, a total of 12, obviously. And then an offense that just isn't doing enough. I mean, you think about it, you got to score more. I mean, just in general, let alone the fact that you've gotten these possessions that have been accelerated by the takeaways that your defense has had. So this is, I don't want to say a trial and error period or an exhibition period or a preseason period, but the Cowboys are a playoff team. They're very likely going to be division winners. Obviously, the seeding is still, going to be figured out across the NFC contenders over the next 3 weeks, but you gotta take this time, Cowboys. You have to stabilize yourself offensively because this formula likely will not work. Anything's possible, anything can happen, but this formula likely will not work when you play the top teams in the NFC. So you have to get the offense back on track. No better time to start than the present. Cowboys back at home at AT&T Stadium for the first time since Thanksgiving Day. So hopefully that kind of makes them feel a little bit more comfortable and lights the offense up. Now, number 2 for me, other side of the ball, defense. Cowboys defense was amazing against Washington, right? Cowboys defense was incredible. Micah Parsons was amazing. That was, I think he's still in the running for Defensive Player of the Year, but that was kind of the game that really accelerated the conversation nationally around him potentially picking up the award. He's obviously locked up Defensive Rookie of the Year a long time ago. Don't take your foot off the gas, all right? And that's not been an issue for this Cowboys defense. We've known that all season long, but defensively, the Cowboys just go after them. Take care of this. I mean, show this Washington team with their stupid benches and all how inferior they are to you. We don't want to see the Cowboys defense regress. We want to see the Cowboys defense continue to rise, continue to just stabilize themselves in an elite place where they've been over the last month to get themselves ready for the playoffs because, assuming the offense gets back on track, you're going to need an elite defense if you want to win a championship. Thankfully, that's kind of where the Cowboys are at. Final point of concern for me for this unique sort of game. We kind of touched on it already, but and I think this is something that Mike McCarthy's been really good at, and he's been really good at it, obviously, in his career before he got to Dallas. But just because you're a playoff team, just because you've won the NFC East, if that does wind up being the case before this game takes place, you have done nothing. We don't show up here. We don't, I'm going to be football cliche man here. We are not in this for the caps and t-shirts that say NFC East champions. We want multiple caps. We want multiple t-shirts. We want it all. We have been waiting for 30 years, over 30 years, to get number 6. That's what we want to see. And so now it's time. I say over 30 years. That actually wasn't correct, but it's felt like over 30 years. The point is, we have been waiting an inordinate amount of time. You are here. You are right now. You are on the cusp. You are on the precipice. You cannot lose sight. You cannot lose focus. And the NFL is a crazy place, right? This time a week ago, yeah, we knew the Cowboys were going to win the NFC East. Yeah, we knew they were going to be a playoff team, but it felt like, and it has felt like, they were locked into that 4 seed for such a long time. But last week, they got all sorts of miraculous help. They get a Bucs loss to the Saints. They get a Cardinals loss to the Lions. So all of a sudden, there's life to this idea that they can not just win the East and everything that we said, but they can legitimately be the top seed in the NFC. All of those goals are still in front of the Cowboys, and they have to keep winning if they want to attain them. So good for you, Cowboys. You got to this place, but you got to do a little bit more. So what about Washington? How do they feel? What are things like with the football team and their fans and their supporters? To figure things out, we do venture across enemy lines. Brian Stabby does a fantastic job covering the football team for hogshaven.com. As mentioned, SB Nation's home for Washington football team content. Here's our conversation from earlier in the week. To be joined now by, once again, the one, the only, the legendary, incomparable, internationally famous, supremely handsome, supremely talented, 5'10", I'm going to guess, based off of the visual interaction we've had. I haven't read his driver's license. From our nation's capital, actually found out just before we started shooting this, a fellow Manchester United supporter, so on the right side of the fence there, the wrong side when it comes to Cowboys football team matchups. From Hogs Haven Podcast Network, everything, the extraordinary Brian Stabby. Stabby, thank you so much for joining us once again.
Happy to be here.
Are you? Are you? Are you really happy?
I mean,
2 weeks ago we spoke. Cowboys embarrassed Washington.
Yeah.
Then Washington embarrassed themselves a little bit, lost at Philadelphia, and then Stabby, Washington really embarrassed themselves because of this whole bench thing. So, are you really happy at the moment?
I mean, is anyone ever really happy? What is the notion of happiness?
What's the state of happiness?
Yeah, like that's what we're getting into this week. I mean, getting deep, sure.
How have things been? Because at the time, last we spoke, Washington had won 4 in a row, longest win streak in the NFC. And you kind of talked about it. There was a little bit of like, this team's playing with house money. We didn't totally expect this. It would be nice to get one of these 2 wins. And I said at the time that I thought, and still somewhat think, Washington would be the 3rd wild card in the NFC. That has really taken a hit over the last 2 weeks, not just with the loss to Dallas, but the loss in Philadelphia on Tuesday night. Has all the wind dissipated from the sails? Is there a little bit left? Where you at?
I would say the well is running somewhat dry. It's not completely empty at this point. They still have the shot, although they are like right now slotted in at the number 10 spot in next year's drafts. It's always like, okay, well, which direction is this going to go? Until you're done and dusted, I think you got to have hope, especially when you have the ability to sort of like control enough of it that you could put yourself in the driver's seat to continue and sort of play to the playoffs. I think, and because BLG's not here, I'm going to talk some smack about Philadelphians and their sports. I was never
He's a Chelsea fan. I don't know if you know that, so feel fully free to keep going.
Yeah, okay, then I can add that to the laundry list here. I was never, there's sort of like an ideology. There's a lot of ideologies as I see it for Philadelphia sports fans, but like their whole thing with like the process, the Sixers, I know we're going off in a different direction here, but like actively rooting for your team to suck in the hopes that someday they may have enough assets to not suck. And you're like, well, that may be a couple years down the line. It's like, it's like a very cynical, and I feel like antithetical approach to like what being a sports fan really ought to be. Like if you're going out there and being like, yes, like the analytics tell us that we have improved our draft percentage by 5.4% because such and such a thing happened. It's like, look, of course you want the best for your team. But I would say the fun of sports is going out there and hoping that the time that you have spent invested in your club, watching them, sort of paying attention to the news is well spent, right? Like, what do you have if not to go out there and sort of say like, okay, like I want to see some improvement. I want this time to be well spent. I want there to be some return on my investment. And maybe there is some amount of like, I want it now, but also like the idea it's like, well, okay, so if we stack some draft capital and such a thing, like that, I think it's just not a fun way to look at things. Now, of course, like what is best for the team can mean different things at different times, but I'm not a big like tanker. I'm not a big like blow it up without there being some sort of a plan. Now, is that to say that Washington doesn't have a ton of room for improvement in areas that they do need to improve? I mean, yes, no one denies this, but I think right now, like where we sit, Washington at, now 6-8, still with an opportunity to make the playoffs in an expanded field in a pretty weak NFC. I'd like to see them make the playoffs. If you get a chance, like go. If it means that they're going to lose in the first round of the playoffs like they did last year, okay, whatever. They made it. It was like worth your while. It was another Sunday that you got to watch your favorite team play. So like, why not hope for that? And if you're saying like, well, the difference between draft spots for last year was Micah Parsons versus Jamin Davis, and there is a gulf between those two players. I mean, there are just as many stories you could say on the other side of guys where like, okay, well, they took them too high and then someone behind them, Mitch Trubisky versus Patrick Mahomes, like whatever. But at the same time, it's just like, you can't, I think it's like not a fun way to think about things when you're looking at it that approach. So yeah, I'm hopeful, but obviously the last 2 weeks have been a blow to this iteration of this team.
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, you're going to get a lot of people who are like, "Oh, tanking is good," blah blah. But I agree with you. There is a hope to being a sports fan. In fact, big movie this week, Home Alone. Kate McAllister says it's the season of perpetual hope. That's kind of what being a football fan is all about, or fan in general, particularly of Manchester United these days. But so, and not only that, like there is something I think to, especially if you're a historical team like Washington. I understand that the history of it is somewhat tainted and somewhat not glamorous and is under construction and whatnot. But I mean, do you know off the top of your head? I've looked it up while we were talking, just to be certain here. The last time they went to the playoffs in consecutive years, because that is technically on the line here.
Oh boy. Well, it's probably in my lifetime, but I mean, I know the times they've been to the play. It's got to be like what, the early 90s, right? Like
1990 through 92.
1992,
the Super Bowl year sandwiched in between there. Yeah, so I mean, it's been a while. Like, and I think that goes a long way. I think, and if Ron Rivera's 2 for 2 on playoff appearances, I mean, even if he goes 0 for 1 in both of them, I think there's something to be proud of there, especially with the rebuild and the rebrand and whatnot. And so, in that sense, Stabby, because I don't think either one of us are, not picking the Cowboys to win here. I mean, we don't have to waste time with that. But are you rooting for, or are Washington fans rooting for, I suppose, because the Cowboys can clinch this thing, clinch the NFC East well before kickoff on Sunday. Right. In fact, there are 5 games in the noon hour that if they just get 2 of them to go their way, one of them is the Chargers over the Texans. That's an extreme likelihood. And then maybe it's Patriots over Bills, maybe it's Jaguars over Jets or whatever. Are you rooting for the Cowboys to have clinched the NFC East? Do you want a softer Cowboys team potentially to have to play against, to maybe, because I have to be honest with you, I think if Washington loses this one, I think their wild card hopes are well out the window. Yeah,
I mean, if you get to 9 losses, I think it's not looking good. I mean, no, I think I want to see the game at its best. Like I want these teams to want to play for something. And, for the way that the schedule shook out with Washington having all these division games on the back end, right? Like, I think that it means something additional. Like you never want to see a division opponent sort of like get your number regardless of circumstance, right? So I think it makes it more interesting to me if there is something on the line at that point, although like based on what the schedule looks like down the line, I mean, whether or not it's before kickoff or even after this week, Dallas is looking pretty good in terms of their positioning to make the playoffs, regardless of the outcome of this game, frankly. But yeah, I mean, it's fun when there's something additional to play for. I will say though, I mean, let's say the Cowboys have clinched before game time. It's not like they're going to start resting starters at that point. So
I do wonder if they'll, maybe rest Zeke, maybe, be a little bit strategic with that, but you're right. Like they're hardly folding and packing up, it is still, they're still playing for, the 1 seed, 2 seed, whatever the case may be.
Right. Yeah. They still have plenty left to play for. The circumstances under which they would sort of wholesale rest their guys from the opening gun, I think are, I just like can't see that. Maybe let's say this one runs away in the second half, like in a theoretical circumstance, it's a 4-score game in the second half. I don't know that that's going to happen necessarily, but yeah, could I see them maybe letting Dak rest for a couple series in the fourth, and like maybe they use him more, a spare platoon in the backfield? Like, yeah, maybe, but I think it'll be fun regardless. There's a lot of history between these clubs. I think there's not a lot of love between the fan bases. I think even the players, and some of it is like, of course, you want your guys to say stuff like that, but yeah, I'm excited. I think it's going to be a fun one, sort of regardless of the other stuff that's surrounding it in my mind.
So I would get in trouble with our audience if I didn't ask a hard press question about this. Now, again, I did identify with you early on a common thread here as Manchester United supporters. So gotta brace you for this.
Sure.
There's a level of cordialness that I'm extending here because we both root for the red, white, and black here. But the benches, Stabby. Are you happy? Are you proud? Are you embarrassed? Are you indifferent? And in case anyone is unaware, the Cowboys took their own benches to FedEx because FedExes are so porous when it comes to the visiting team.
Yeah.
Already a level of embarrassment for the franchise.
Sure.
And so then the franchise, you could actually literally call them that, I suppose, and be accurate. Decides to the very next day. That's the part that really is a tough mental thing for me. The very next day reaches out to the same bench supplier to get benches themselves. It feels very little brother Stabby. The floor is yours.
I mean, I love pettiness. I just think it's so hilarious. Like, when there's stuff like this where it's like really harmless, the stakes are so low, it's just like very funny to me that this happened. It's like, I'm not embarrassed by it. If anything, like, you just have to laugh about it. Is it a little bit little brother? Yeah, sure, it is. But just like, this is a division where these teams just like love to kind of, flick guys in the nose a little bit, like regardless of what it is. If it's the social media managers, like there's always going to be like a little bit of just like, quit touching me. But I think it's like what makes the rivalry fun. It's not just like the wins and losses. It's sort of like the whole thing around it. Is it silly? Yeah, it's incredibly silly. Is it ridiculous? Yeah, it's ridiculous. But I mean, that when I saw that the Cowboys did that at first, part of me was like, well, I don't really blame them. Like, of course the facilities aren't very good. Like, anything you could do to get a competitive advantage. But then for Washington to turn around and do the same thing, it's like, well, okay, sure, fine.
I would be lying if I said that I didn't greatly enjoy it, especially the fact that they're now 0-1. I would be lying also, Stabby, if I said I wasn't kind of hoping that they just lose every single game with them, mostly for the purposes of generating content.
Sure.
If
Lots of content, yeah.
So this is kind of, again, this is a break point for Washington, because if they lose this game, it's okay, it's now time to kind of pack this season up. And this is the end of purgatory. Maybe you don't feel that way, but with the rebrand scheduled to come in the spring or whenever it ultimately lands, there will be a new chapter of this franchise that is opened somewhat soon. what have you felt about this one? Because this has been a weird and interesting chapter. These last 2 seasons, it's been filled with Mike McCarthy and Ron Rivera, potentially a sweep back and forth. Some interesting games for the potential 2 division champions, the likely 2 division champions in that stretch. Has it been what you wanted? I mean, this is such a unique team to try to get a perspective on as an outsider.
Yeah,
I'm curious where you stand.
I mean, when you look at this year, I mean, there's no way anyone could have predicted that this is how things would have shaken out. And I mean, maybe it was almost undoubtedly naive to have picked Washington to repeat. I guess it's now what
like my friend Stabby did once upon a time.
I did. We've we'll rake me on the coals here. I mean, it'll be the 17th year in a row or something that there hasn't been a repeat champion in the NFC East. It's just kind of the way of the world. Any time though that you have to like call up a quarterback on a Friday to play on a Sunday, ultimately a Tuesday, things have not gone the way that you have hoped or anticipated or could have predicted by any stretch that it was going to go. And it's a hard thing because, you know, Jay Gruden for several years got the benefit of the doubt because he was constantly dealing with teams that were injured. Like he's like, well, he never had a full slate of guys that were never fully healthy. And I think it bought him like 2 full seasons past his expiration date. That it's like, well, it's hard to assess whether or not they're actually good because they're never healthy. And it's like, well, okay, you know, you play the hand you're dealt, and if you can't win, you got to go, right? So, you know, there's a sort of a similar thing materializing, and don't twist words here. I'm not advocating for this to be like Ron Rivera in the hot seat, but it's just like, well, there's a lot of excuses anyone could make, say like, oh, well, if a couple of things are going just a little bit differently, it's like, well, yeah, there isn't a single team in the league that doesn't deal with injuries. There isn't a team in the league that isn't trying to like manage their own COVID situation right now. I mean, it's there. You could find any number of excuses for Washington, really for just about any club, but especially for Washington, that like, well, if X, Y, and Z hadn't happened, then we'd be having an entirely different conversation. But we're not, because those things did happen. So when I look at this matchup, I'm kind of just hoping to see, you know, good, fun, competitive football, a good division rivalry matchup, sort of with stakes that matter. Like beyond that, really, what else can you hope for? I mean, you want your team to win. That's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. I think, you know, Washington, it looks like, is getting Taylor Heineke back this game. Whether or not he's the long-term solution, I don't think he is. But like for this week, I think they're probably better off than having Garrett Gilbert try to start again. Which is, I mean, he played fine. He did about as well as you could hope a guy who got called on a Friday to play against a division rival. I mean, they didn't lose because of him.
Right.
There was a lot of other reasons that they didn't beat the Eagles, and it wasn't entirely on Garrett Gilbert's shoulders. So, you know, it's like a 11-point spread. I think it'll probably be closer than that. You know, I predicted when we last talked that the Cowboys would win the first one. I did think that Washington would beat the Eagles, though no one could have seen the plague overtaking the team at that point. I don't know. Like, could I see them still going in and like doing something wacky? Like that is kind of just how this division has operated for a really long time. Do I think it'll happen? Probably not. But like, could it happen? Would I be totally shocked? Absolutely not.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's very strange. It's been strange, and it's this NFC East barrage is intense. You know, last week we had Dallas, New York, Philly, Washington. This week we have Dallas, Washington, Philly, New York. Next week, Dallas and New York have the week off, but you got Philly, Washington back at it again before the final week. So 3 out of 4 weeks, you got total NFC East madness happening, with potentially most of those games rendered insignificant with the Cowboys clinching, which is a great job by the NFL schedule makers, of course. I agree with you. I think I know there's no moral victories, but I think if you're a Washington fan, you look back on the season, you beat the Bucs. That was a great day, great week. And not that the Cowboys are the big brothers, although the bench thing, again, kind of cements that in my mind, at least. you played 2 December games against the Cowboys, and they both held significance. I mean, I think the odds would have been against that for this franchise for most of the last, quarter century.
Right.
So that's nice. And so to kind of tie a bow on this, Stab, it's been unique, obviously, talking to you twice in 3 weeks. Having seen the Cowboys once and getting ready to see them again, what do you think their ceiling is as the Cowboys do get ready to make their hopeful playoff run? Do you think this is a team that can win the Super Bowl? Do you think they have a ceiling that's beneath that?
The league has been so weird this year as a whole that I could see, like, it's one of those ones where like anyone who gets in, I think has got a shot. I put them probably in that like second cut of teams that are going to make the playoffs. Like, I think there's like a very clear sort of upper echelon, although like in any given week that can come and go. Like 3 weeks ago, I probably would have put Baltimore in that cut. And, between injuries and COVID and sort of like a bit of a skid, yeah, I mean, the injuries are crazy over there. Like, they have probably dropped down. So there is still some machination there. So like all of that is to say, I could see the Cowboys winning a couple of playoff games, assuming that they make it, which reasonably, I think, is probably going to happen.
It's literally a 99% chance of probability. So
yeah, sure. But, like, I think there are still a few teams that are going to have to punch up to beat. But again, like any given week, for sure, I could see them kind of going on a run. I think it'll be interesting to see if they get that bye. That's going to play so large this year. I think now sort of like going forward, like that there's only just the one bye on either side, having to play just one fewer game and like sort of let everybody else beat themselves up is going to have outsized importance going forward. And I think it's good. I think it's good that they're making games matter from end to end. I mean, there are so many years where like Peyton Manning wasn't playing in the last week of the season because like they had the thing wrapped up and like they had the 2 seed, where it's like you want the games to be fun and worthwhile to watch. And so to have it be like, there's only one team that's going to get to sit next weekend, let it be you. And that'll give you a huge leg up. It'll be really interesting, I think, to see how these last couple of games play out and sort of what they have to play for in terms of that number 1 slot. So yeah, all that to say, I think I could see them going on a run. I think that they are not all the way at the top of the list, but they get in the dance. I think they got a shot for sure.
Brian Stabby, guarantee the Cowboys winning the Super Bowl. And I think you're right, by the way. Obviously the bye only, being given to the top seeds was instituted last year. However, this is the first year with 17 games. So you're now talking about everybody playing an extra game. And then on top of that 2 seed and whoever else doesn't get the first round bye. It's an inordinate amount of football to play, kind of back to back to back to back to back. So if you can manufacture a first round bye in week 18 by kind of being locked in as the 3 seed or 4 seed, whatever, you play your cards as they're dealt, kind of like you said. But so we'll see. We're obviously now and always rooting against the Green Bay Packers so the Cowboys can get into the mix there. Stabby, last one for you. Where does United finish in the table? I didn't plan to ask this, but I have to now.
Yeah, I think that they can. I think they can finish top 4. I think that
if they don't with Ronaldo, I mean,
I know it would be pretty embarrassing, though. This is also, the teams that I like love to find ways to embarrass themselves. It's just like a common thread.
Oh, dude. Well, imagine rooting for Jason Garrett's Cowboys and then Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's Manchester United. Like, I've lived this life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
I'll say they finished 3rd.
To who? City and Liverpool? City and Chelsea?
I think Chelsea is pretty. I think they've got a little run in them. I'm not. It doesn't give me any joy to say that, but
yeah, we won't tell BLG.
Yeah, no. Don't let them listen to this. We'll just have to block him on this one. So
Brian Stabby from Hogs Haven, you can hear him every week on the NFC East mixtape with myself and the aforementioned BLG. Chimes in with his thoughts on Washington, the little brothers that they are. But he is not a little brother. Was I right? 5'10"? Am I close?
I mean, close in that like a human being can be that size. I think what I lack in stature, I make up in heart.
You know what? And you've got the voice of an angel, Brian
Oh,
Stabby.
thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been great to talk to you twice over the last 3 weeks. Hopefully next year it's spread out a little bit. We want to see that, don't do this, NFL. Nobody likes to see this all, crammed in together like this. Brian Stabby, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you and your family. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Big time shout out, big time thank you to Brian Stabby for taking the time to join us. Did not know until we actually set up to record that he is a Manchester United supporter. So hopefully you are as well. If you root for Chelsea, don't want to hear about it. If you root for Liverpool, don't want to hear about it. If you root for the Dallas Cowboys, definitely very interested in hearing about it. The Cowboys, let's be honest, are going to beat Washington, right? We all feel that way. But, Washington is an interesting place. It's a whole interesting thing this entire NFL season. What do we need to pay attention to? What do we need to focus on just a little bit more? It's now time to dive into the film room with Matt Minnick to learn just a little bit more.
The first time that Dallas played Washington this season, it was all about one thing: defense. The Cowboys went into halftime up 24-0. But who do you think they have to thank for that? You guessed it, the defense. To come out on top again, Dallas will need another standout performance on the defensive side of the ball. The Cowboys' first 2 possessions ended with a field goal and a turnover respectively. Then the defensive line stepped up and showed its dominance. Washington tried to throw a wide receiver screen, but the cut block on Randy Gregory was ineffective to say the least. Gregory leaped up in the air and tipped the pass to himself for the interception. Fantastic play. This set up the Cowboys' first touchdown a few plays later. Fortunately, the defense was not done. The very next Washington drive ended with yet another turnover, but this time it was the Dallas D that took it to the house. Micah Parsons comes on the blitz and rips by the guard with ease. He gets to the quarterback, causing the fumble that Dorrance Armstrong picks up and takes back for 6 points. Huge play by the rookie phenom. Washington was able to put together a couple of touchdown drives in the second half, but it was the defense that gave them a shot at the comeback. They held the Cowboys to 3 and out on their first 2 possessions of the fourth quarter, and the Cowboys' third drive was even shorter. Dak Prescott runs the boot, and when his initial read was covered, he looked for the backside crosser. Unfortunately, he didn't see the linebacker underneath. Cole Holcomb intercepted Prescott's pass and took it all the way back for a touchdown. Fortunately, the Washington offense fumbled away their chance at a comeback on the next drive. The Cowboys won the Week 14 game because their defense made some big plays in the first half, helping them build an insurmountable lead. But the offense's trouble in the red zone was a major concern. They must do a better job of finishing drives this time around in order to sweep the series with Washington.
Big time thank you to Matt for taking us into the film room. Not a lot of fun to relive the Cole Holcomb pick 6. Like I said, Cowboys made it a little bit dicier than it had to be last time they played against Washington. Let's hope this time it's really boring. Nice cruise control victory sooner rather than later. We don't want any of these last second sort of antics because the whole world's going to be watching, really. And in case you didn't know, this game is in front of the whole world. Taking place on Sunday Night Football. The Dallas Cowboys hosting the Washington football team, not at the Washington football team. It's Christmas. Sometimes things slip by. This is at home at AT&T Stadium. Cowboys' first game in the building since Thanksgiving Day, as mentioned. 10-4, now playoff bound Cowboys, likely NFC East champions by the time this happens, against the 6-8 Washington football team, who a lot of people foolishly thought would repeat as division champions. Imagine being one of those people. I can't. Sunday Night Football, NBC, Al Michaels, Chris Collinsworth, Michelle Tafoya. If you want to watch it, obviously you can also watch it on Peacock. I mentioned the Premier League got some matches there. That's how I know that. But as always, you can listen to this game on the home of the Cowboys, 105.3 The Fan. Brad Sham, Christy Scales, Babe Loffenberg on the call. A lot of people, I say this all the time, love to line up the audio with the TV so you get the home broadcast with the television broadcast. It's an interesting experience. You got to try it once or twice. But yeah, so it's now time for predictions, time to tell you exactly what we think is going to happen. It's not a Madden prediction or Madden simulation, although Madden's been pretty interesting as of late here on our channel. You can go watch our simulation for this game. Spoiler alert, the Cowboys win. But don't tell anybody I told you that. Anyway, I've got the Cowboys winning 26-19, which would not be a cover. Cowboys have covered more often than not against the spread. At the time of this recording, our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook do have the Cowboys as 10.5-point favorites, although that's bounced around a little bit depending where you've looked. Maybe you got it at 10, maybe you couldn't get it at 10.5, 11, 11.5. Like I said, it's been all over the place all week long, but it should be an easy 11th win in a row for the Cowboys, a third divisional win in a row. Did I say 11th win in a row? An easy 11th win overall for the Cowboys, an easy third division win in a row, an easy fourth overall win in a row. There we go. Let's get our words right in a row. And hopefully that's the case. Whatever happens, win, loss, draw, maybe. We'll be here afterwards on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel, the Blog on the Boys Facebook page for our live Dallas Cowboys post-game show. It will be late, so make sure you drink a cup of coffee, whatever you got, maybe some leftover Christmas treats, get that sugar in you, because we're going to have to stay up late, celebrate, obviously, what's going to happen. I say it all the time. I really mean it, and I want to say it again because it's Christmas. As Kate McAllister said, the season of perpetual hope. There's a lot that can happen for this Cowboys team this year, and we're all really excited, and we're really excited to experience it with you. We're so grateful as this year comes to a close that you have chosen to make us part of your Cowboys fandom. At the end of the day, we all share a common bond in that we all love this team. And that is so cool to me that we can come and we can meet from wherever you are, wherever I am. And in the name of rooting for this team, we can come together. That's a really cool thing to me. And we take great pride in the work that we do here at Blog on the Boys, our staff here on the YouTube channel, on our site, our podcast network, our social content, etc. And it just means a lot that you would give us that time. This is a time of gift giving, and there's no gift more precious than the gift of time. And so the fact that you would give us some slice of yours really does mean a lot. We want to make the most of it. So thank you for helping us have successes this year. Looking forward to 2022 and beyond. Looking forward to the rest of this Cowboys season. Looking forward to more than anything experiencing it with you here at Blog on the Boys. My name is RJ Ochoa. You know me from Blog on the Boys all throughout the Blog on the Boys universe. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at RJ Ochoa. You can always shoot me an email if you'd rather do that, rj.ochoa@sbnation.com. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. I said it, not in sync. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next time.